Bertrand Russell said, "Mathematics, rightly viewed, possesses not only truth, but supreme beauty, cold and austere." It's something to do with the coldness and austerity of mathematics that makes scientists turn away from its true power. Many physicists actually rail against mathematics, and especially its beauty. Physicist Sabine Hörsenfelder literally wrote a book called Lost in Math: How Beauty Leads Physics Astray. Just consider this for a moment. What does beauty mean? It means order, organization, symmetry, universalization, coherence, perfection. Hörsenfelder believes that reality is ugly, imperfect, clunky, disorganized, asymmetric, particular, incoherent. Who in their right mind would actually believe that? Has Hörsenfelder never actually seen the fucking universe? It's impossible for it to be based on ugly, crude, messy physics in preference to beautiful, harmonious, elegant mathematics. People such as Hörsenfelder are pedestrian, unimaginative scientists. One of the great scientists, though by no means perfect, was Nobel laureate Paul Dirac. He wrote, "It seems to be one of the fundamental features of nature that fundamental physical laws are described in terms of a mathematical theory of great beauty and power. It seems that if one is working from the point of view of getting beauty in one's equations, and if one has really a sound insight, one is on a sure line of progress." A good deal of my research work in physics has consisted in not setting out to solve some particular problems, but simply examining mathematical quantities of a kind that physicists use and trying to get them together in an interesting way regardless of any application that the work may have. It is simply a search for pretty mathematics. If you are receptive and humble, mathematics will lead you by the hand. Again and again, when I have been at a loss how to proceed, I have just had to wait until I have felt the mathematics lead me by the hand. It has led me along an unexpected path, a path where new vistas open up, a path leading to new territory, where one can set up a base of operations, from which one can survey the surroundings and plan future progress. You may wonder, why is nature constructed along these lines? One can only answer that our present knowledge seems to show that nature is so constructed. We simply have to accept it. One could perhaps describe the situation by saying that God is a mathematician of a very high order, and he used very advanced mathematics in constructing the universe. Our feeble attempts at mathematics enable us to understand a bit of the universe, and as we proceed to develop higher and higher mathematics, we can hope to understand the universe better. Dirac, like Wigner, was very close to getting it, to breaking through to a mathematical understanding of reality based on universal beauty, driven by symmetry. But physics is full of midwits like Hörsenfelder who will never get it. They will never get close to the truth. It's forever barred to them. They don't have the aesthetic sense for it, let alone the reason and logic and the intellectual horsepower. Dirac said, "Just by studying mathematics we can hope to make a guess at the kind of mathematics that will come into the physics of the future." A good many people are working on the mathematical basis of quantum theory, trying to understand the theory better and to make it more powerful and more beautiful. If someone can hit on the right lines along which to make this development, it may lead to a future advance in which people will first discover the equations and then, after examining them, gradually learn how to apply them. Dirac was moving onto the right track. Most physicists are nowhere near. That's why science cannot unify its best theories. Countless physicists work on unification, but not one of them is of sufficient caliber to make it work. Someone like Dirac, if shown ontological mathematics, would see what to do. But there are no Diracs in today's physics. It has been overrun by people like Hörsenfelder. Science is more and more anti-intellectual and grotesquely hostile to both mathematics and physics. It increasingly resembles an irrational religious faith, one driven by the senses rather than feelings. Science rejects all of the following: the analytic a priori, logic, reason, the principle of sufficient reason, Occam's razor, first principles, universalization, top-down thinking, deduction, holism, coherence, completeness and consistency. It doesn't explain why it rejects these, and there's no one in science equipped to debate this. What science does is follow the synthetic a posteriori rather than the analytic a priori, particularization rather than universalization, bottom-up thinking rather than top-down thinking, parts rather than the whole, correspondence rather than coherence, induction rather than deduction, sensory empiricism rather than reason and logic, rationalism, experimentalism rather than first principles, agreement with experiment rather than the principle of sufficient reason, complexity rather than Occam's razor, ugliness rather than beauty, imperfection rather than perfection, the inconsistent and incomplete rather than the consistent and complete. It's not so much that science explicitly rejects the right way of doing things as it systematically chooses the wrong way of doing things. Whenever it has a choice, it always chooses the wrong option, namely the scientific rather than mathematical route to the truth, the empiricist route rather than the rationalist route. Philosophers engaged in convulsive debates about rationalism and empiricism. There is no equivalent debate in science. Rationalism is never mentioned. It nevertheless appears in science via mathematics, but mathematics is always regarded as an unreal, man-made abstraction, and always rejected when it comes to drawing purely mathematical conclusions. Wikipedia says, philosopher Richard M. Weaver in Ideas Have Consequences, 1948, describes how the acceptance of the fateful doctrine of nominalism was the crucial event in the history of Western culture. From this flowed those acts which issue now in modern decadence. Nominalism paved the way for scientific materialism. Universalism, had it retained its power, would have led to a mathematical understanding of reality. Luckily, universalists survived in the Illuminati, and they successfully produced the answer to everything, ontological mathematics. Wikipedia says, the noted American philosopher, W.V. Quine addressed the problem of universals throughout his career. In his paper, On Universals, from 1947, he states the problem of universals is chiefly understood as being concerned with entities and not the linguistic aspect of naming a universal. He says that Platonists believe that our ability to form general conceptions of things is incomprehensible unless universals exist outside of the mind, whereas nominalists believe that such ideas are empty verbalism. Quine himself does not propose to resolve this particular debate. What he does say, however, is that certain types of discourse presuppose universals, nominalists therefore must give these up. Quine's approach is therefore more an epistemological one, i.e., what can be known, rather than a metaphysical one, i.e., what is real. Metaphysics, ontology and epistemology all go together. What is known is what is real. False knowledge pertains to unreal things. Quine failed to locate the real issue. The argument between the universalists and nominalists, particularists, reduces to whether reality is made of language or not. Language, because it is intelligible, is about universals. Materialism, because it is about sensory things, is about particulars. Language is necessarily structured in terms of universals. That's what makes it intelligible. Observing particular things is not in any way an intelligible process. Science isn't intelligible until it applies the universal language of mathematics. A language-based reality is totally different from a things-based reality. The former is a mental reality, the latter a material reality. Nominalists believe that language concerns empty verbalism. In fact, language is the basis of existence, but purely when the language in question is mathematics. It can never be sufficiently stressed how everything would change if everyone understood reality to be made of intelligible language rather than sensible matter. But humans, because of their senses, are somehow repulsed by language. What was it that made humans conscious? It was the acquisition of language. It was the capacity of humans to apply universals to particulars. Animals can't do this. That's why they are stuck as animals, prisoners of particulars. Consciousness, defined by language, defined by universals, is the key to mental evolution. It's because reality is made of language that the highest beings on earth, the humans, have language and are conscious. Higher consciousness means higher use of language. It certainly doesn't mean expanded sensory capacity, as so many New Agers and psychonauts believe. It certainly isn't about meditating and living non-judgmentally in the moment, as the mindful claim. It certainly isn't about love and light, as the New Age emotionalists claim. Language is the key that unlocks the secrets of the world. The key isn't observation, as science claims. Imagine how different science would be if it was based on analyzing language rather than observing things. Absolutely everything would change. The scientific method certainly isn't about discovering the intelligible language of reality. It's about unintelligently gawping at reality as if contained no inherently intelligible qualities. Wikipedia says, Roger Penrose contends that the foundations of mathematics can't be understood without the Platonic view that mathematical truth is absolute, external and eternal, and not based on man-made criteria. Mathematical objects have a timeless existence of their own. This is all true apart from the claim that mathematics must be external. In fact, it must be internal. It must be what everything is made of. It must especially be what our minds are made of. Mathematics is not external to us. It is us, and that's the only reason we can discover what mathematics is. We are simply discovering ourselves. It's impossible to discover anything genuinely alien to us. Since reality is a monism, a mental singularity, it's impossible for anything to be alien to us. Things can certainly seem alien. People once regarded their own dreams as coming from external entities, until they realized they themselves were the authors of their dreams. The world does not exist externally to us. We all create it between us, but we have to work this out. Science works in the opposite way. It imagines that the world creates us. Science more or less claims that dreams create their dreamers.